Hello, students. Welcome back to your history class. We are learning chapter 7, that is changing cultural traditions. So, up till now, we have learned that Italy is the home to Renaissance. The meaning of Renaissance is rebirth. And the reasons of the origins of Renaissance is basically the European trade with Asia, which increased in the 13th century. In the 12th century, the 14th century, that is the 1300s. Italian merchants organized much of the trade, and trade cities in Italy started to grow wealthy. Now, they competed to create work that would increase the prestige of their cities. Florence became a center for banking, art, culture, and literature. Cosimo de' Medici wanted to make Florence the most beautiful city, and Renaissance began in Italy and spread throughout Europe. Now, what was the importance of the city-states of the Renaissance? These You can see these are the great architecture buildings that we have. Florence, Rome, Venice, Genoa, Milan, these are the names of the city-states. Out of these, Florence and Venice, these were republics, and Venice and Genoa, these two were different from the other cities because in these two cities, that is in Venice and Genoa, the clergy was not politically dominant, nor were the feudal lords dominant. In fact, the rich merchants and the bankers, they participated in governing the city. And this helped the idea of citizenship to strike root. This was the city-state population in those years. Each Italian city-state had its own wealthy ruler. That is because city-states were ruled by a wealthy ruler. What do we know about Florence? That Florence was a center of art, literature, and culture. It became wealthy from the manufacturing of wool, and later it became the banking center of Italy. The Medici family were the greatest bankers in Florence. The Renaissance started in Florence and started to spread through Europe. Competition between the Italian city-states led to the advances in literature, architecture, art, music, and education. Talking about the Medici family, it ruled Florence in the 13th to 17th century. It aimed to make Florence the most beautiful city in the world. They became, and everyone became the patrons of art, and they commissioned the artists like Da Vinci, Raphael, and Michelangelo. Lorenzo the Magnificent, he created peace amongst the Italian states, and it ended with his death. Rome. Rome is the home of the Catholic Church. Popes commissioned famous artists and architects to beautify Rome. Michelangelo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Botticelli all produced major works in Rome. The popes had employed the best artists and architecture of Renaissance to build and decorate the most opulent churches in the world. Michelangelo designed the finest example of Renaissance architecture in Rome, the Piazza del Campidoglio. He also designed the dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Venice was the wealthiest city-state of the Renaissance. It was a port city on the Mediterranean Sea. Venice maintained hundreds of merchant ships and warships and thousands of sailors. Genoa. Genoa is located on the Mediterranean. Genoa was one of the two main port cities in Italy during the Renaissance. Genoa was one of the wealthiest city-states of the Renaissance, and it dominated the trade in the Mediterranean. Milan dominated the inland trade routes because it was the gateway to Italy from the north. Milan is the site of Santa Maria dei Grossi, the cathedral where Leonardo da Vinci painted the Last Supper in the dining hall. Now we are going to talk about some famous people. These people were also called the Renaissance man, Niccolo Machiavelli. He is an Italian philosopher, diplomat, poet, musician, and playwright. He's best known for The Prince. He wrote a book called The Prince. In this book, he spoke about ideas of practical politics, how rulers should behave like a lion and at other times like a fox. The ends justifies the means. It was better to be feared than to be loved. All this was done to keep the peace and stabilize power. He was first to publicly suggest immoral behavior for government stability. That means he said that sometimes the prince or the rulers have to be generous, sometimes they have to be miserly, sometimes they become benefactors, and sometimes they are grasping for power. Sometimes they're passionate, sometimes they are compassionate, sometimes they're faithless. At the same time, there are times when they are faithful. One man effeminate and other cowardly, another fierce and another is courageous. Sometimes they are proud, sometimes they're lascivious, sometimes they're guileless, sometimes they're crafty. All these are different layers of a ruler. He believed that all men are bad, are very, very bad, and they're ever ready to display this vicious nature, partly because of the fact that human desires are insatiable. He said that the most powerful motive as the incentive for every human action is self interest. So he was the first one to publicly suggest immoral behavior for government stability. Now, if you talk about the art and architecture, and we will compare the medieval art and the Renaissance art, but I think this is a little later. We must first speak about the science and philosophy, that is the Arabs' contribution. This is important. So now, much of the writings that uh, the Greeks and the Romans had, they had been very famous and they were very familiar amongst the monks and the clergymen, especially in the Middle Ages. But they were not widely known. Not every people knew about them. They were not widely known. So in the 14th century, what many scholars did was they began to translate the Arabs' work, the Arabs' science and Arabs' philosophy work. They started to translate the works of Greek writers like Plato and Aristotle. Okay, and they started to translate this into Arabic form. So translators who had carefully preserved and translated ancient manuscripts. Okay, so basically what happened is they started to translate the work of Greek writers like Plato and Aristotle. So Plato was now written in Arab, and it was Plato was recognized as Aflatun, and Aristotle became Aristo in Arabic. Okay, so what did they do is they started to translate the Greek words because the writings of Greeks and Romans, they were familiar, they were common, they were known to uh, to clergymen and to the monks, but they were not known to everyone. It was not widespread. Not every common person knew it. So to make it more familiar, what did they do is they started to translate the Greek and the Roman works into Arabic language. Okay, so they started to translate Greek writers like Plato and Aristotle, and they were translated and they were preserved by the Arab translators. And what did some Europeans and some Europeans read Greek works in Arabic translation, and the Greeks also started to translate Arabic and Persian scholars in their languages, in the European languages. So there was a two-sided, like while these people, the Arabs, were translating Greek and Roman work in Arabic, the Greek and Romans were also translating the Arabic word in their own languages. Okay, so the Greeks also started to translate Arabic and Persian scholars for further transmission into their cities. So these works were basically on natural science, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and chemistry. Ptolemy's Almagest, the Almagest of Ptolemy was the work of the 14th century, okay, on astronomy in Greek language, and it was translated into Arabic. It carried Arabic alphabets al, which also shows connection with the Arabs. Among the Muslim writers who were regarded as men of wisdom in the Italy, okay, were Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina is the one who wrote Avicenna in Latin in 1980. He was an Arab physician and philosopher of Bukhara in the Central uh, Asia, and he also wrote Al-Razi. Okay, Al-Razi, author of the Medicinal Encyclopedia. Then there is Ibn Rushd. So Ibn Sina, Al-Rashi, Ibn Rushd, these were the people who were regarded as men of wisdom in the Italian world. Okay, so what the Ibn Rushd did is he was an Arab philosopher of Spain, and he tried to resolve the tension between philosophical knowledge and religious beliefs. His method was adopted by the Christian thinkers. His method was so good that it was adopted by the Christian thinkers. Now what did the humanist do is the humanists, they reached out to people in lots of ways. So these were the humanists who were translating these works. They were the ones who took this initiative, and they started to reach out to people in various ways. And though the curricula in university continued to be dominated by law, medicine, and theology, humanist subjects started to be introduced in the universities. Now, although in the universities the subjects taught were basically law, medicine, theology, slowly the humanist subjects started to be introduced in schools. And this happened not only in Italy, but this happened in European countries also. Okay, so this is how the science and philosophy, it started to and have humanist subjects became a part of the universities. Okay, and what is humanism? All right, so that is all we are going to do today. Next class, we are going to start with next class. Yeah, so next class, we'll start with artist and realism. That is the next part of this chapter. Till then, children, stay home, stay safe, take care, keep learning. Thank you.